Hi, welcome to Gnage Virtual Science. Today we're going to be covering weathering. Now, weathering is a natural process that would change things on Earth's surface, like objects on Earth's surface, over time, okay? And that change can be done by mechanical changes or by chemical changes.
Hi.
And we're gonna talk about that together, okay? So, hi Colin. Are you gonna join us and talk about weathering?
I just found a brick also.
That's awesome.
And I threw it in the water.
Great. So we're going to be talking about two different types of weathering, mechanical and chemical weathering. And to help us with today's lesson, I ventured out into our neighborhood and I'm going to be exploring evidence of weathering. So let's get started. Okay, so the first few examples I found have to deal with mechanical weathering. And mechanical weathering is when you take an object like rock, okay, and break it just into smaller pieces. And that's all mechanical weathering is. And Colin has an example.
It's a brick.
And what happened to the brick, Colin?
It broke in like a piece. I found it in the yard, blah, 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 so.
Okay, so I found a couple of other examples here along the seawall. So right here, the concrete, okay, has broken into two smaller pieces, okay? There's a crack there. And right here, it's also mechanical weathering. It's breaking in part into smaller pieces. And a lot of different processes can cause mechanical weathering. This one was obviously caused by the water, the wave action hitting the concrete over time. Up here is another example of mechanical weathering, and this is done by plants. And plants, you can see when they grow their roots down into the soil, sometimes they hit rocks. For this instance, they're hitting the concrete along the seawall. And as they grow, those roots grow into the concrete. And you can see here, this root has cracked this concrete by growing into it. So plants can cause mechanical weathering. Plants' roots can break apart the rock over time. Okay, so Colin and I found another example of mechanical weathering along here on the seawall, and it's like nature's sandpaper. It's called abrasion. So Colin, show me the first two rocks that we found. And what are they like?
Rough.
Rough? All right, and so these other two rocks, here are the other two, Colin. Can you describe these for me?
So these are smooth.
Smooth.
Like a spoon.
Okay, and can you take this rock and rub it here and show me what happens? Okay, so it's breaking down into smaller pieces there.
Really small.
Yeah, it's kind of like this is grinding it down, and that's what abrasion is. It's like nature's sandpaper. So this rock here got really smooth by, over time, water rubbing other sand and pebbles against it. And it's called abrasion. That's how rocks get smooth, just like nature's sandpaper. So here I am in the street, and I've come across an example of mechanical weathering, a process that breaks down objects into smaller pieces. See all these cracks? Okay, so when water gets into these cracks and freezes and thaws and freezes and thaws, the freezing action actually expands the water and pushes the cracks apart. Now, I know we're in Florida and we don't get a lot of freezing water, but this is something called ice wedging that does happen when water gets into the cracks of rocks. It can break it apart. So that's an example of mechanical weathering, is water changing space due to temperature change, freezing and thawing. So I'm going to use this as an example of mechanical weathering. Now, I don't know if this is exactly what happened in my garden, but here's my herb garden, and I have some basil. And right here, I used to have some chives, and they went missing. And there was a little bit of a hole right here that looks as if an animal dug up my chives, perhaps a squirrel. And so animals can actually cause mechanical weathering. So when they dig, the digging process can break apart sediment into smaller pieces. And so animals' digging process can cause mechanical weathering. And I'm pretty sure someone stole my chives. Okay, so those were all examples of mechanical weathering. And remember, mechanical weathering just takes the object and breaks it into smaller pieces over time, just breaks it apart. Whereas chemical weathering, when we use the word chemical in science, we're talking about a change. And so here are some examples of chemical weathering that changes the object, not just in size, but in composition. So here we have an example of chemical weathering. And what I'm showing you is here, there are some metal pins that have been used in this concrete by the seawall. And over time, oxidation has occurred. And oxidation is the fancy word for rust. And rusting is an example of chemical weathering. And you can see the metal pins no longer look like shiny metal. It's changed color. It's also very brittle. I can break it apart with my fingers here. And look, you can see the rust stains that have trickled down this piece of concrete. So oxidation, rust, is an example of chemical weathering. Okay, I found another example of chemical weathering here, and this is along the curb here. And what has happened is over time, the rainwater and also the water action from Tampa Bay has actually dissolved some of the concrete here. And when water dissolves things, sometimes it can break apart the chemical composition that makes up this concrete. And if it does, that is considered chemical weathering by water dissolving it. That's an example of chemical weathering. Okay, so Colin, here's another example.
You already saw this too.
The brick, yes, but I'm looking down here. Do you see on the curb there where it's orange in places? Point out where it's orange on the curb. Yep, that's an example of chemical weathering. So there must be some metallic or metal sediments here made up in the curb that is causing the curb to rust, oxidize over time. So that's an example of chemical weathering. So Colin and I found another example of chemical weathering, and it's on this metal frame on this drain cover. So Colin, what's happening to that metal piece?
So it's about to like break and fall.
Yeah, it's falling apart. It's corroding, and also you can see the rust. It's oxidizing, oxidation. And so this is an example of chemical weathering. Okay, so here is one of my last examples. This one is chemical weathering, and you can see I have a ceramic bunny in my garden, and it's getting rained on. And if the water is slightly acidic, anything in the water that makes it slightly acidic, like acid rain, is going to dissolve the ceramic bunny and break him down over time. And so he's losing some of his indentation. He's losing some of his detailed features because he's out here exposed to the elements, and rain will actually cause chemical weathering due to acid rain. And so that happens a lot of times in cemeteries, on cemetery headstones, but I don't have a headstone in my garden, just a ceramic bunny. So that's our lesson on weathering for today. Again, weathering is the processes that cause things on Earth's surface, objects on Earth's surface, to change over time, whether it is breaking it down into smaller pieces like mechanical weathering, or actually changing it in chemical weathering. And so thank you for joining me on my neighborhood exploration of finding examples of mechanical and chemical weathering. Now it's your job. Your assignment this week, in addition to your notes that you took, I want for you to go out and find an example of weathering at your house, something that has been weathered, either mechanical weathering or chemical weathering. And you are going to include a picture when you upload your notes for Monday. So again, that's your assignment. You have to find evidence of weathering at your house and include a picture when you upload your notes. Bye.